Now, in today's video, I would like to ask you just a simple question. When you hear of the brand Littlest Pet Shop, do you think of a massively popular cartoon media empire that spans across multiple seasons, cartoons, movies, and otherwise, big enough to have its own internet fandom and dedicated adult and child fans alike? Or do you see something that's just a bunch of cheap plastic toys? Because that's the stark difference between something like My Little Pony or Transformers and Littlest Pet Shop. Arguably, the reason Littlest Pet Shop exists in the first place is just as a way to sell cheap toys to children. Mainly little girls looking to ogle over little baby animals. And believe it or not, when they were first coming out with these Littlest Pet Shop toy lines and such, they were still in this sort of 80s mentality that would be categorized as toyetic by the marketing department of massive animation studios and such.
Toyetic is a word created by marketing people. It means an object or device featured in a cartoon that could easily become a mass-produced toy.
I'm not going to be the first one to ever say this, but this might come across as a little bit cynical. Toyetic shows have been an absolute cancer towards entertainment in general. These shows that are basically a vehicle towards selling toys and not so much something that entertains children. I mean, they have entertained children, but that's not the main purpose of these shows. Thankfully, they are cartoons that have come out after the 80s, I might argue, where they were not based on some big toy line. They were just a creative idea that was funny to the producers and the creators of the show, and they put them on television. There was no need for a toy line. It was just a entertaining show to watch on TV. You saw this sort of revival in the, I'd say, the 90s, and then another sort of revival back in 2010. Is a big year for cartoons. You have Adventure Time, you have stuff like My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. You have all sorts of new IPs that came out during this time of the early 2010s, some of them still ongoing to this day. One little thing called Littlest Pet Shop tried to ride the wave, but it was not the first wave that it tried to ride. There was another cartoon in the 90s used to promote the Littlest Pet Shop brand, and it is trash. It is nothing like you would expect. I will explain why it is quite possibly lost media at this point, why there are only VHS rips that you can find on YouTube videos, but we will also see, how furry is it? Why not? And intro. So you may think it's ironic that I bring up shows like Transformers and My Little Pony as good things, as the things to strive for, even though they are based on toy lines as well. What I was getting at is the idea of cartoons being cartoons rather than being cynical corporate products to sell toys. And I'm not saying that a cartoon isn't allowed to have a toy line based on its property, just what is more important to the cartoon, telling a story or selling a toy. The difference is giving people creative inspiration and giant fandoms, even pre-internet I would say, versus, selling cheap plastic. Okay, back to the video. So first, let's start off with what this show actually is. This was only one season long. It featured about 40 episodes. Well, each of them were cut into 11-minute segments, 2 per episode, quote unquote. It features 5 tiny littlest pets, you might say, in a small pet shop. This shop is squished between 2 gentrified buildings, and the pet owner is an oblivious goof.
Guess there's more than one way to see the stars.
So you have Stu, a dog, Chloe, a cat, Viv, a British, I think, rabbit. It's hard to tell if she even has a British accent sometimes. I don't think it's very well pronounced in the show.
Ugh, almost scrambled. Boy, I would have had egg on my face.
You have Chet, a cowboy horse, and Squeaks, a monkey.
Of course.
You also have a Eastern European sounding monitor lizard named Delilah. You have Butch, a hamster that acts like a sergeant. There's also, apparently I just figured this out, there is Mumsy, the archaeologist and explorer who is the pet shop owner's mother. I didn't know why she was called Mumsy at first, but like, that's not a usual name. I was trying to figure out, like, what does that mean? Oh, that's the mom of the dude. Okay, sure. And there's no central plot pulling together any of these episodes. It's just sort of here's some wacky animals doing crazy stuff and going into misadventures. That's the basic rundown. So just what makes this so bad of a cartoon? Where do I start? You have cheap, lazy animation, just the absolute worst, in my opinion. So they got the animation studios over in places like Korea and Taiwan, the same studios that worked on Animaniacs, Goof Troop, any sort of Disney or like Warner Brothers cartoon that you know of, and made them either do like a rush job or they just did not care and let them do whatever they want in terms of the animation. With such a low budget, it's incredible that you would make this your brand, that you would want to step in with your first foot facing forward, just, hey, this is Littlest Pet Shop. Here you go. There's so many spots where it's obviously repeated animation. There's spots where they forgot to animate something. There's very lazy just slide transitions between scenes. Is this what you expect from a cartoon? Really? This was, by this point, a Hasbro property. Like, Hasbro put money into this. They thought that this would be acceptable, but that's not the worst part. You also have to deal with the audio. There are noticeable dialogue cuts and edits. Somehow they decided that it was too expensive to do a redo of some of these lines, so they just took what appears to be a longer cut of an audio line from a voice actor and just split it up so that it somehow fits the animation better in post.
Sorry, pal. Hamster auditions were yesterday.
This is such amateur stuff. How does a big company get away with this? There's also very obvious weird sound effect placements and audio mixing. Like, the primary humor that this show goes for is slapstick. As someone who grew up watching cartoons that had quite a bit of slapstick, this is such forced slapstick audio to emphasize whatever crap is going on screen. It is not very good. There's so many stock sound effects that they use just because, oh well, it's a cartoon. This is the catalog of the cartoon sound effects. Use these. Whoa! And this wouldn't be such a problem if other shows with their own sound effect libraries didn't do such better jobs with this. A show like Ed, Edd n Eddy will always be a gold standard of what you can do in terms of like sound effects, even for slapstick, for scene transitions, for just setting whatever tone there is.
Cool. Huh? Ouch. Tough guy, huh? Man, that bites.
And also the music in that show is very memorable in terms of like all the little jazz pieces and such. Speaking of music, I think this person primarily worked with General MIDI. Not even real instruments, just the cheapest public domain synth instruments that you could find. Like, check out this trumpet line right here. And here is the General MIDI sounds right here. This is the trumpet. I'm gonna let this play. Indistinguishable in my opinion. Like, if that's what it takes to be a musician for a 90s cartoon, sign me up. Here's my resume. Oh, I forgot to mention, there are just random moments in the show where they just have obnoxious amounts of reverb every time someone sings. And I don't understand why.
I love a good opera, unless it's a flopra.
This is what I mean by terrible audio mixing. I hate to be such a downer on this, but this is such a bad attempt at a cartoon. But it's almost in like a so bad it's good kind of a territory, especially since it tries to emulate the meta-humor that shows like Animaniacs and Freakazoid did. It will pull you right out of an episode just to throw in a bit where it's like a fake commercial thing, or like it'll show you like one of the in-universe characters arguing with one of the writers of the show that you're watching right now. Animaniacs specifically takes place in like a film studio where these characters live. They literally, the setting is Warner Brothers Studio. And since it is a Warner Brothers property, they know a bit more about how to handle like these sort of wink wink nudge kind of a jokes about the process of media in general. But not Littlest Pet Shop. I think it is forced, and they were trying to ride this little meta-humor wave that these Animaniacs and Freakazoid kind of shows were trying to do. And it's almost like excusing itself for being so bad. It's like saying, you know, what did you expect? This is a cartoon. We even talk about how this is a cartoon. None of this matters. Who cares? I think the most egregious example of this is the episode where they spot a friend of the little Sergeant Hamster fellow about to be cooked on a cooking show. So they get on over to the local studio that's filming this cooking show, and then in the middle of a confrontation between the, I guess, a producer or stage crew person and the main cook actress, or the personality that's doing all the cooking, they go into this little breakdown of, wait, we didn't write this scene very well. Can we rewrite this? Like, they actually go into discussion about this in character dialogue. And I'm just like, if you had to point out how bad something is, that's not good writing. That just means you didn't do very well. And even though the toys sold fine regardless of this, no one remembers this cartoon. It did not leave a cultural impact. Which brings me to my next point. Why is this your branding? Why is it part of your branding of your cartoon to take the piss out of yourself? But you know, it's not all that bad. It's just not very good. It's kind of grown on me from how much I watched it. Like, I can show this to people and say, look at how weird this thing is. And it even gave me a couple of chuckles in an unironic fashion. But for the most part, I was just baffled by what I was seeing on screen. You know, I looked at the TV tropes page on this little mess of a cartoon, and it was giving it praise for all this, like, referential and meta humor. But, like, I don't get it. Just because you reference something doesn't mean it's funny. I mean, people still have a problem with this nowadays. This will always be a problem. But that doesn't mean it's an excuse. Honestly, this show could work. In a weird way, they could do whatever they want. They could write it how they wanted to. But with such a limited animation and overall production budget, it just doesn't serve this thing well. I'm tempted to call this just a cynical ripoff of stuff like Freakazoid and Animaniacs. You know, I'm being nice about this. I'm being generous. I don't want to call this the worst thing ever. I've seen worse. Trust me. But I guess now we go into the more important questions, which is, how furry is this thing actually? Let's break down these furry qualities into 3 different parts. First, let's start off with cast. Just how many characters are there that are furry in this cartoon? Well, you have a world of both animal and humankind, just like real life, but now there's miniature animals that exist there too. Just go with it, it's a cartoon, whatever. Now, the regular animals interact with the miniature ones. They're on speaking level and understanding, basically. But the humans are there too, and sometimes they can understand the pets, sometimes they don't. It really depends. It's really just based on plot convenience. While all of the episodes basically focus on the Littlest Pet Shop animals and their problems and their relationships and such, humans are still technically the majority of this world. If we are truly basing this off of real life, there's not much to say in this regard, so I really don't know how to classify this. It's just real life technically the cartoon version of real life, but you have some fantasy elements in there that are the miniature Littlest pet shop animals. There's nothing too crazy about them, and the primary objective is that the show focuses on them and their wacky adventures. So in terms of cast, I'll just put this right in the middle with medium. Next, let's talk about Furriness. What kind of anthropomorphic and otherwise furry qualities do these characters actually have? There are two kinds of animals. There are the ones that walk around and act like their real-life animal counterparts, and then there are the littlest pets, the more anthropomorphic kind, that are still cartoon stylized, and might I mention, after doing some research, they do not look anything like the actual toy line. And I don't understand that. Again, why is this your branding? You're not going to sell like dolls or action figures that look like the anthropomorphic littlest pets. You're going to sell the little tiny baby ones, right? So whether they look like this, it doesn't make sense in terms of like a branding thing. It doesn't really matter that much in terms of the cartoon itself. Like, you can make them just regular animals that walk on all fours and stuff. But just because they want to be like the Animaniacs that's crazy with the kids and all that, that's what they do. They still think and act like their real-life counterpart species, even down to their personalities, as one note as they might seem. The cat is obviously deadpan, and the dog is just a goofball that likes sports and overeating, which are very stereotypical cat and dog respective personalities. You also have the monkey, who's the goofy comedic relief, different from the goofy dog character. Well, the difference is the monkey does not actually speak. It has no actual speaking lines. It makes sound effects, it can pantomime, but it doesn't actually talk. I don't know why. He expresses himself however he wants to.
Good job, bud. Thank you, Mr. Monkey Man, for teaching me how to laugh. Mwah!
You have a macho horse, cowboy kind of a character, stereotypical for a horse. Then the rabbit, I don't know where they were going for the rabbit. It's the most original one, I would say. I don't understand why the rabbit is very music focused, because that's not a stereotype of rabbits. If anything, making it like a cowardly kind of a character that's hyperactive in a way and jumpy, that would make more sense if we were just going off of animal stereotypes. They needed at least one musical character, and they couldn't think of another pet animal that fits that, so, whatever. It's not consistent on whether they can properly communicate with people or not as well. They joke about that in the show too. I don't know why, and it's not all that clever, honestly.
I told you he'd be terrific. If you could talk, I'd let you call me Yak.
And you still have cases where it's like you have a little bird that hangs out with them. I forgot her name. You have the Delilah lizard that can stand up on two legs, but chooses not to. Kind of crawls around and has a little collar on its neck like a dog. And then some of the other animals, like the actual normal size animals, have weird anthro details, like this horse, which looks so uncanny and bizarre. It's kind of disgusting looking. Rubs me the wrong way, I'm sorry. Overall, it's just kind of a mixed bag, so gosh, I guess I'll call this medium as well, in terms of furriness. Lastly, we will talk about relevancy. Just how relevant is their furry and anthropomorphic nature to the plot of this cartoon? First off, there is no plot. There's nothing tying these episodes together. You can watch them out of order, and consequently, it's just a big goofy cartoon to sell toys. But it's at least meta about it, which basically means there's no reason for these miniature Littlest Pet Shop animals to even exist. In universe, there's no reason for them to be the way they are. If they were, say, dolls, action figures, actual toys, then that would make more sense. It's just a weird existence in general for these characters. They are actors within their own cartoon, as shown by how many times they break the fourth wall and discuss how they're not actually like a part of the end universe as a cartoon, but like, you know, they also wink at the camera and say, hey, this might be a cartoon, but we know, and then also just perform the episode like normal actors do, as if they weren't aware. It kind of pulls me out of the show. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? My theory is that these aren't actual, like, living, breathing animals, and they are just toys that have come to life for some reason. They're just sapient playthings that are somehow sold in a Littlest pet shop, and the 5 of these things, plus the recurring characters that live inside the pet shop, are not the only ones that exist. There are other miniature Littlest pet shop animals that exist outside the shop. Where the hell even is this place? What is this setting? I honestly just don't get it. On one hand, you have all the episodes that deal with them being some sort of living animal creature, but on the other hand, overall, it doesn't matter that they are the animal creatures that they are. I'm going to have to rate this as medium-low in terms of relevancy. So what do we have so far? We have medium in both cast and furriness, and then relevancy is medium-low. Put those together, I'll just call this medium-low in terms of overall how furry is it. In terms of furry qualities, it's not all that furry, and in terms of being an actual show, it's a train wreck, absolute wreckage of animation, sound, voice acting, writing. There may be some people that might enjoy this. I know there are people that enjoy this because they've uploaded this onto YouTube out of pure love, but you will not find this series anywhere else. It's not on Amazon, it's not on eBay, I've checked, it is nowhere to be found. So the remaining copies that exist belong to like the few dedicated fans that for some reason fell in love with this show. I don't hate on them, I don't think they're bad people, I just do not understand their taste in media. I am not surprised that the toy line outlasted the cartoon, and why they rebooted it after a while. So that was How Furry Is It? Thank you for watching. This has been Lightning Runner as Burger the Bull. This little YouTube channel is dedicated to quite a few things furry, whether it be reviewing things, furry topics in general, all sorts of analysis and stuff if you want to check my other videos out. You can also catch my social media down in the description. You will see my Telegram, my Twitter, and my Instagram that I don't really use that much. I have a TikTok account. I have a couple videos on there as well. That's just me goofing around though. You will also see a link to my
Discord
name and my
Discord
server. You can interact with me and talk about furry things and share furry memes with me and other fans of this YouTube channel. But you will not get the full benefits of this Discord server, I may argue, unless you are a part of my Patreon. If you are generous enough in this day and age, give at least $1 every month to me through Patreon. You will get bonuses like early viewings of episodes just like this, as well as other content like my vlog series and any other analysis videos I do of furry content and media and furry fandom in general. You will also find special sections and channels dedicated to what tier you are on my Patreon. You can also be a sponsor on this channel if you are a small business or an artist looking to show off their projects, their commission prices for art, anything you want through this channel. Go ahead and do that on my Patreon. Again, down below, that is my social media, my Discord server, and my Patreon. If you liked the video, give one of these. If you didn't like it, do one of this. You can also go down in the comment section and tell me what your favorite Littlest Pet Shop character is, if you have one, or if you want to expand upon whether these are actual sapient toys or real-life animals that just happen to be Littlest and miniature. And you can also subscribe to this channel, hit the bell icon for notifications, but I argue you should probably watch a few more videos just to get a feel for how this channel is. You can stick around and watch a couple more of How Furry Is It? See ya!
Look, Boogerhead, check out the cottontail on that bunny.
Yeah, really cool, Tony.
Hey, Boogerhead, it's cool.
Yeah, I'd like to park that in my garage.